Hey guys, hope everyone's doing really well today or tonight. I want to make a quick video on how to invest into the stock market. Now, obviously, this is probably, one of the most spoken about topics ever. But I will say, I think it's something again that not everyone kind of covers enough in detail, or they miss things, or they don't consider what it looks like for someone else other than themselves, right? So, or they might not be as targeted. Maybe it might be the opposite, and they're not as targeted as they probably should be for their audience or their subscribers. Maybe they're looking at more broadly Australia or the world, and maybe their audience is more US. So, I wanted to make this video and just go through the basics and some helpful tips at the end as well. So, hope you guys enjoy. Now, some initial steps to get started. I mean, kind of one of the more obvious ones, right? But make sure you have some money to invest. Make sure you have some savings. Some apps do allow below $10 to start. Others will require more, right? Now, I'm talking about Australian and US stocks in this case, right? There are apps like I think it was Raise that you know some I think they end up taking like a small amount off each transaction. So, for example, if you spend $4.90 on a coffee, they'll take the 10 cents and then invest that, right? Those are called micro investing apps. It just depends, right? But they might have higher fees on certain things because they kind of automate it and make it really easy for you to invest. Whereas others might have a lower fee, but they require a little bit more. So it's not as expensive for them to do business. Personally, I've used Stake to invest in US stocks from Australia. In my opinion, it's been great and super cost effective. I've actually been grandfathered into their Stake Black program, which is, I think it's about 20 or $30 a month. I don't pay that. I've been grandfathered in because I was I guess, one of the early adopters of Stake before the word got out. So that's been really good so far. You will, when you do invest, you will need to fill out like lots of different forms. Not lots, but a few different forms, including a W-8 form for taxes in America. If you do end up investing through something like Stake into the US stock market, and also verify your identity. So just a little bit of paperwork. Don't be too scared. It also might end up including things like your tax return as well for Australia, or potentially a sign up form or something like that. Nothing too crazy, but there are different things that do need to be filled out before you start investing in securities or the stock market. Once approved, or once you've created your account, you'll be able to purchase essentially parts of different companies, which is really cool. Indexes, which are essentially groups of different companies, bonds. So these are essentially you know, portions of debt that are being paid back with interest. So you can purchase into that. Different commodities, for example, like gold, silver, different compounds, etc. That you can invest in. REITs stand for real estate investment trusts, and you're essentially purchasing ownership in different real estate trusts, and that could be collections of different real estate portfolios from around the world. Or more. There's lots of different things you can invest in, but I'd say companies are the most frequented, but there might be some other cool options that you could explore as well. Some apps will allow more risky or leveraged trades. Robinhood got into a lot of trouble a few years ago with that. But I'd suggest starting with the basics. Don't look into the whole options thing or leverage trading. In my opinion, to start off, a lot of people do promote leverage trading as a get rich quick scheme, or make money really easily by following different things. Personally, I'm a little bit more old school. I started with the basics, and then looked into potentially other things in the future, including cryptocurrencies and other different type of assets. But I think for most people, just starting off with the basics, and dollar cost averaging in to the market, or just slowly starting to tack off a few cents off each purchase and then invest that, I think it's going to be a much easier way with less resistance and less headache and stress as well. Um, okay, let's talk about how to start investing into the stock market, right? So I personally started by listening to what others were investing in. So that would mean listening to a YouTuber, which generally speaking is not the best thing to do. YouTubers are YouTubers; they're not professional advisors. They're not financial experts. It's essentially for entertainment, right? So getting proper advice will be best. However, I will say that I mixed a little bit of both, right? Where I mixed what YouTubers were saying, what I was reading up with my own research, and I felt confident enough to invest in that, and it ended up doing quite well for me. But again, this could come down to timing. This could come down to just luck, etc. So as a blanket rule, be confident with what you're investing in and try not to rely on what other people say without doing your own research to back it up. Now, some safe options in America, would be investing in VOO or VTI, which are both Vanguard funds, and essentially what they are they kind of track the S&P 500. The S&P 500 is an index fund or an ETF with 500 of America's biggest companies, biggest publicly stock traded companies. And yeah, there's lots of different great options from Vanguard. They kind of group, also different ETFs by sector, by industry, by risk, by lots of different things. So if you go on Vanguard's website, there'll probably be a bunch of information on all the different funds that they offer for both, America, Australia, and other markets. And you can have a look at those. They also have really low fees. I think iShares is another one that has some really low fees. But again, have a look, see what's out there. There are lots and lots of options to choose from. Now, you can pick indexes based on sector, investing risk, asset allocation. Like I just mentioned before, there's also I mean, yeah, there's just so many different things you can invest in. I'd say generally speaking, start with VOO or VTI. At least that's what I did personally, and that worked really well for me. And then I was able to diversify into different types of ETFs, and then potentially companies as well, if that is part of your wealth strategy. Now, you will start earning dividends, which can be either taken out or reinvested. Dividends are essentially payouts from the company. They're normally, a few percent points on what you invest. So, for example, if you invest $100, you might get a total of $1 through the entire year. So it's not fantastic, but I think over time, when you're able to dollar cost average in and really build that portfolio, and then reinvest those dividends, those one percenters or 35 percenters start to compound and build massive, massive returns over time. So especially in Australia, where you have the option to get franked dividends, essentially tax favorable dividends. This could be a really good option, for investing. And I guess getting money from and then being able to reinvest it could be a really good option for you. Now, you will also start to pivot or invest into different options as you start seeing returns and declines and testing different things, right? So for you, ultimately, you might end up really loving the tech sector or the aviation sector, whatever it is, and only invest in those types of companies. You might only end up investing in index fund that tracks the S&P 500, like VO or VTI, and leave it at that because it's really simple. It's low fee, and there's no headaches. There's no need to read all financial reports, do all that kind of stuff because it's all done for you with a VO or a VTI. But test different things, see what you like, and you'll be able to kind of get a good idea of what investing looks like in the stock market for you. Now, some guidance and a few useful tips for investing in the stock market. Just know, obviously, like anything where you're making money, there will be tax implications. And in the case of stocks, it might be dividends and capital gains, which can make things more complicated. Dividends are essentially payouts, and as they are payouts, they're kind of treated as income. So obviously, you get taxed on your income, but again, there is some nuance around that. with unfranked and franked dividend credits, which could be make things a little bit easier for you. And the other one is capital gains. So when you're selling your investment, hopefully it's gone up in value and you've made a little bit of profit. Now, depending on your marginal tax rate and your personal situation, you'll pay a certain amount of tax on that. More than likely, there might be some other different structures you can use where you don't have to pay capital gains. But just for the sake of this argument, if we're investing in through something like stake, where you're just investing in your own personal name, etc., capital gains if you make money. If you don't make money, you may be eligible for a capital loss, and then that can offset some future gains as well. Understand as well, especially if you're based in Australia like me and you're investing overseas into America or any other international stock market, that there will be a element of currency risk. This could also be seen as good, right, or bad. I think recently the US dollar has done quite well against the Australian dollar. The Australian dollar is at a low, I believe. For yeah, it's definitely at a low. So if I were to have invested in US stocks, say a couple of years ago, and I were to sell now, I would not only be getting hopefully an increase in the actual asset price and sell for a gain, but also there'll be some currency gain as well, which could be awesome. But it could also work the other way, so just be aware of that. Now, people generally have a goal when they're investing. Some really love dividends and invest in something called Dividend Kings. I was really into this back in the day. Essentially, you focus solely on companies that have paid dividends for 25 years and over. Or even 50 years and over. They are really strong, and they're guaranteed to essentially pay you out dividends regularly. For example, Coca-Cola or Procter and Gamble, and that's a way that people can kind of live off their stock portfolio without having to sell any assets because the dividends are paying them enough. That 1.35% per year payout. If you're earning, let's just say $2 million. If you have a stock market of portfolio of $2 million, and you're getting paid out 5% per year, that's $100,000. So more than enough to live a decent life in most places in the world. So you know, others want really quick growth and they're not so concerned about dividends. For example, investing in Nvidia, Apple, or Tesla, they're looking for that capital growth to make substantial returns and less so about figuring out how they can kind of retire early, incorporate FIRE or financial independence, retire early, or something like that into their life. So, yeah, last point here. Whatever brokerage you do use, just make sure that they do charge low fees or no fees at all. And I've said here, read the product description as well, statement. So, ideally, you don't want to invest through something like a brokerage that charges high fees but has good returns. Ideally, you want low fees and high returns. What wouldn't be good is low fees and low returns. That obviously is not a good idea. But if you can find that sweet spot in between where there's a greater difference between what you're making and what's costing you, that's when you're going to again kind of compound those returns. And again, if you invest through an ETF like a VO or a VTI or just individual companies, the fees will also be lower, and that can also help assist in growing your capital over time. So hope you guys have enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, let me know down below. Or otherwise, like the video and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.